You know, County College of Morris has had a long-standing relationship with NASA, and it's largely thanks to the efforts of our Congressman Rodney Frelinghuysen, who has made it possible for many astronauts to visit our campus. We've had, going back to the year 2000, Rick Husband, who was the pilot of the ill-fated Columbia, which of course went down in February of 2003, was on our campus, and I vividly remember his visit. He was an outstanding gentleman and outstanding astronaut, and deeply missed by NASA and by his family. Also in 2000, we had Patricia Hilliard Robertson, who also was lost tragically in an aircraft accident. But I remember, and I was sharing with Dr. Reisman her visit to the campus and how she was telling us about this young astronaut from Parsippany who was so much fun and had such great leadership and so forth. And sure, here enough we are today with him on our campus. We also, in 2001, we had Wendy Lawrence on our campus, and in 2004, Dr. Ellen Baker. I think both of them were here as a result of our program. We have a program called Women Who Dare for young women trying to interest them in science and technology, and they have been an important part of that program. And then finally, just this past year, we had NASA Administrator Michael Griffin on our campus, who gave a wonderful presentation to a nice audience here. As I mentioned before, we have a planetarium at the college. It's been in existence for 37 years, and I kind of had a feeling that having been around that long and knowing that Dr. Garrett is not quite that old, that there probably was a pretty good probability that he had visited our planetarium, and sure enough, he did confirm with me today that he did. And that's why I'm so delighted to have these young people from Parsippany here today, because who knows, in that audience there may be a future astronaut. I can tell that there are many who have that aspiration, so who knows, maybe we'll be here in 20 years and welcome one of you guys back. We average about 12,000 to 15,000 people going through our planetarium every year, most of them about this high, about the height of these young people, school groups, scout groups, and so forth, and again, promoting science and technology. Of course, being 37 years old, it's very old, and the equipment is in bad shape. It's literally held together with duct tape, but we have had a very successful major fundraising campaign. I've mentioned some of the donors already, and we're well on our way to have a total renovation, and it's going to be a very exciting project. With all of that as introduction, and I apologize for taking that much time, let me turn to Dr. Reisman. We are really thrilled to have him here. As I was telling him, I feel like I know him because of the Weisbergs, because of the email connections he was keeping up with his high school classmates. I feel like I know him. I remember the first pitch in the baseball game, thrown from outer space, which was an awesome event. That put him really on a national stage. Of course, he was educated in Parsippany, born in Morristown, went to Parsippany High School. He went on to the University of Pennsylvania, where he got 2 bachelor's degrees, one in economics and one in mechanical engineering. Then he went to Caltech, where he got an MS and PhD in mechanical engineering technology. He was selected to become part of the NASA program in 1998, and he worked for a couple of years in different capacities, working on the robotic arm for the space station and so forth. He was a crew member in 2003 on the Nemo 5 project, which meant living in the bottom of the sea for a couple of weeks. And then he served on both Expedition 16 and the Expedition 17 crews as a flight engineer aboard the International Space Station. He launched with the STS-1234 crew aboard Space Shuttle Endeavour on March 11, 2008. During his 3 months in space, he performed a spacewalk totaling 7 hours and 1 minute. That 1 minute must be significant, and maybe he'll tell us about that, but that's in the bio. And executed numerous tasks with the space station robotic arm and the new robotic manipulator Dextry. I can't tell you how excited I am. I know how excited the audience is, but it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Garrett Reisman to the college. Everybody
hear me okay? Yes. Okay, that's better, thanks. It's great to be back. If you give me just a second, I have to disable the screensaver here. Security comes first, and that is, I'm a screensaver too. There's a photograph I took of 2 of my favorite things, which is one is my wife and the other is Yankee Stadium. So. There we go, that's better. Okay, Well, it's really nice to be back, and this isn't my first time, as was mentioned in the introduction, that I've been here at the County College of Mars. The first time, I believe, was as part of a field trip when I came to see the planetarium. Have you guys had a chance to see the planetarium? Yeah. All right. Did you like it? Yeah, it's pretty cool, huh? So I did the same thing, and I don't remember how old I was when I did that, but this is a picture of myself at Parsippany High School, back when things were a little bit different, mostly in the hair department. But it could have been about that time, or probably I was a little bit younger, and I got to come here and see the planetarium, and that was it really impressed me. It was one of the many things that had happened to me when I grew up here in Morris County that set me on my way to the launch pad. And it was the first planetarium I had ever seen, but it wasn't the most unusual. The most unusual one was in Star City, Russia. This is just outside of Moscow, and it's where the Russian cosmonauts did their training. It was a secret Soviet Air Force base back during the Cold War, but now we go over there to train for flying on the space station. And there, the thing that's unusual, when you go to see the planetarium here, the arc in the sky is 180 degrees. So from one horizon up to the top to the other horizon, it's exactly 180 degrees. Because when you're standing on the Earth, that's what you can see of the sky, from one horizon to the other. But you can imagine if you're in orbit around the Earth, you're a couple hundred miles further up. So you can not only see the horizon, but you can see a little bit more. And so that planetarium actually goes greater than 180 degrees. So you can see the actual view of the stars, all the stars that you can see when you're up on orbit. That was kind of neat. But what I'd like to say is, I'd like to show you now a little video of my trip up to space. As was mentioned, I just got back earlier, just less than a year ago. I was up for about 3 months up on the space station. And if it's okay with you guys, I'd like to show you a little video of what life in space is like. Would that be all right? Yes. All right, so here's a little bit of my summer vacation up on the space station.
space right now, would you please take off your wrist strong bracelet and spin it in that astronaut way? Well, sir, I could die and go to heaven now.
from Discovery, physical separation.
You guys ready for a little theme music?
Yeah.
space. All right, we got to get a much bigger rocket. But we'll work on it. What I'd like to do now is just show you a few pictures of some of the stuff you saw in the movie, and then I can explain it a little more detail to you. So this is my crew. This is our official crew photo of STS-123. So this was the crew of the Space Shuttle Endeavour, and you can tell from our photograph that we're very serious, professional astronauts, right? So that's our official crew photo, and this is our less official crew photo, which we call one giant heap of mankind. And really, the whole crew had a great sense of humor. I was really fortunate. I flew with 19 different people at different times on my mission, and all of them were fantastic. And on our crew of the Space Shuttle, it all started with the commander here, the guy on the bottom of the heap pretty much, except for poor Rick. This is our commander, Don Gorey. And he had a great sense of humor. What he did is he sent out an email when we first were assigned to this mission. And in this email, it had a spreadsheet with everybody's jobs, everybody's roles and responsibilities. And on there was important stuff, like who was going to get to do a spacewalk, who was going to get to land the space shuttle, big things. Also on there was your color designation. Now, every astronaut has a certain color that is your color. And then they put these little dots on all your stuff. So you can tell without looking for names whose is whose. So you look for if you're green, you look for all the stuff with the green dots on it. And that way you don't eat the commander's food, which gets you in a lot of trouble. So my color on there was purple. And I wrote back to the commander and I said, Commander, I'm very upset with this distribution of roles and responsibilities. I really think this needs to be changed. I'm incensed. Why do I have to be purple? And he sent me back an email to the whole crew and he said, well, Garrett, you have three choices. First is you can go with the fact that purple is a color of royalty and live with that. The second is, how about pink? And then my third choice, he said, well, we could go ahead and ask your backup what he thinks of purple. I said, okay, I'll be purple. This was our launch. We launched out of Florida at the Kennedy Space Center at Cape Canaveral. And a lot of people ask me what was the launch like on the space shuttle. And how many of you guys have been in a motion simulator ride at an amusement park? A lot of these guys have. Less hands out here. But, or a roller coaster for that matter. If you've been on one of those amusement park types of rides, it isn't altogether different from what it feels like in the space shuttle. It's not a whole lot different. There's a lot of noise, there's a lot of shaking that goes on. The only thing that was really different were the G-forces. So the G-force means how much, effectively how much gravity you're feeling. Or in other words, if you're, right now we're all at 1 G, which means you weigh what you weigh. And if you pull 2 Gs, you feel like you weigh twice as much as you really weigh. If you pull 3 Gs, you feel like you weigh 3 times as much. So we pull up to 3 Gs, and 3 Gs is not a lot. In our aerobatic airplanes, we pull up to 7 Gs routinely. But the big difference is, in the airplane, you pull 7 Gs only for a few seconds. It's when you, for example, when you do a loop, and you pull out of the bottom of the loop, you really push down in your seat, just like you're on the bottom of a roller coaster, and with a force of up to 7 times your weight. But that lasts for a few seconds, and as soon as you are up on top of the loop, all that force is gone. The difference is in the space shuttle, it goes on and on and on. So for minutes, it just keeps going. You're being pushed into your seat at the force of 3 times gravity, and it just doesn't end. And you're like, when is this going to stop? You're not used to feeling it for that long. And your brain is doing a little calculation. When you're in a car or in an airplane and they release the brakes, and the airplane starts rolling down to take off, you feel yourself being pushed back into your seat. Your brain does a little integration and it figures out, that means I'm speeding up, I'm accelerating. Well, you're sitting there being pushed into your seat with 3 times the force of gravity for minutes, and your brain is doing that little calculation. You realize you're going absolutely ridiculously fast. You just know this instinctively. And in fact, you go from 0 miles an hour to 17,500 miles an hour in 8.5 minutes. So it's really fast. And then what happens is all of a sudden, you're in your seat and you're being pushed back with 3 times the force of gravity, And then all of a sudden the engines stop instantaneously. They just shut down, the rocket shuts down. And then you go from 3 Gs to 0 G, meaning that everything starts floating, just like that. But what it feels like as you make that transition is it feels like you're being catapulted out of your seat, being thrown into the bulkhead of the space shuttle in front of you. So, at least if you're me, you put your arms out like this and brace for impact, then you feel really stupid because you're not really going anywhere. You're still strapped into your seat and everything's just floating, but it feels like you're being hurled forward. And then you're like, oh yeah, I knew that. And then you're in space. So we had a couple prime mission objectives. The first was to deliver this robot. This is a new robot that was built up in Canada, and it has a name. It's called Dexter. And Dexter is everything from here up, so everything that's in the sunlight. Everything that's in the shadow here is actually part of the space station's robot arm, which is just one big arm. But Dexter is like a real robot. It's like it's got a body, it's got 2 arms, and it can pivot about its waist. It's got 2 cameras, so it's just like having 2 eyes. So it's really designed to do the same kind of things that we do on the spacewalk. So if you look at this next picture, this is a picture I took of my spacewalk partner, Rick, the guy that was on the bottom of that big heap of people. And Rick he's also got 2 arms, right? He can pivot about his waist, and he's got 2 eyes. You can't see them, but they're there. And so you can see that the robot's really designed to do the same stuff that we do. Rick is also standing on a little platform, which is kind of, we call it a foot restraint, and it's kind of like stepping into a snowboard bindings. You just kind of clip your heels and you're locked in. And he's riding on the end of that same space station robot arm. So we brought up Dexter, and the thing about Dexter is he came up and there was some assembly required. He came up in 9 different pieces. So we had to go out and do a spacewalk to put them together. And what Rick and I did is we put Dexter's hands onto his arms. We connected them at the wrists. There's a picture of, that's me, reaching in there and working on doing what I just described, putting the hands on the wrist. Dexter came up in this big pallet that you saw in the movie. You also saw this module in the movie come out of the payload bay of the space shuttle with another robot arm and get attached to the space station. That's the first piece of the Japanese laboratory module. And that was our other primary objective, was to bring up this piece of the GEM, the Japanese experimental module. And that was very exciting. It was a very proud moment in Japan. There were people that spent their whole careers working on this module that were finally seeing it go up into space after spending decades working on it. So it was a pretty exciting moment. And how many of you guys have ever taken a camera, held it out at arm's length, and snapped a self-portrait? You guys have all, many people have done that, right? Well, I did it too. If you look really carefully, there's my camera, right down there. So everything you see here is just a reflection in my helmet, and you can see everything that we did on the mission, really. You see the Japanese module there in the payload bay. You can see Dexter and his pallet over here. You can see the robot arm, and right about, let's see, right there is Rick, that's Rick's knees. Look really careful. And of course you got the whole Earth reflected in there. The spacewalk was fantastic. It was really one of the most amazing parts, the most amazing part of the whole mission. Now, I got a little nervous when I saw Dexter, when he rose up out of the payload bay like Frankenstein or like a Cylon or something like that. He's over 15 feet tall, so it was a little intimidating, and I thought, wow, what if he becomes self-aware and turns evil? So I asked the engineers, like, do I cut the red wire or do I cut the blue wire? How do I defeat him? So they assured me, don't worry, the one difference between Rick and Dexter is that Dexter does not have a brain. Now, if you know Rick, you might say that that's debatable, but it's true. So the way we operate all the robots, the big arm as well as Dexter, is from this console inside the space station. So we have to provide the brain for the robot. And the way we do that is we have 2 hand controllers. There's my left hand on one joystick. This is another joystick right here that my right hand goes on. And so you have to use both hands, and you just fly them around. Your left hand makes them move forward and back, left, right, up, and down. And your right hand makes them pitch forward, pitch back, roll left, roll right, and yaw left and right. So by using both hands simultaneously, you can get the robot to move just like a living creature. And if you notice, there are no windows. The space station is so big, we couldn't possibly have enough windows in this module to see everything that the robot's doing outside. So instead, we use all these screens. We've got a bunch of screens here, we've got more screens up there, and we have cameras outside, and it's kind of like playing a video game or flying a remote-controlled airplane. This is our crew of the shuttle and the crew of the space station. The space station normally has 3 people on board, although in a few months we're going to increase that to 6 for the first time. But right when I was there, there were only 3, and the space shuttle carried 7 people. So here you see 10 people, and we're all color-coded. So the guys in the green shirts are space station crew members. The guys in blue shirts are shuttle crew members. That's so that when we close the hatches, nobody gets left on the wrong spaceship. Very important. Just kidding. Anyway, so here, this is the fellow that I was taking over for. This guy, his name is Leo Aharts, and Leopold is a general in the French Air Force, and I was taking over for him. And that was pretty intimidating because I never even made it through Weeblos, let alone get the Boy Scouts. But he was really nice, and he helped me out, and he showed me all the nooks and crannies of the station before he left, and the transition went pretty smoothly. So all the space shuttle crew members left, and it left the 3 of us, and we were the crew of Expedition 16 on the space station. Our commander was Peggy Whitson. Our flight engineer here is Yuri Malenchenko, and he's a Russian cosmonaut. He's a colonel in the Russian Air Force, and then there was me. And one day, Peggy was our commander, like I mentioned, but one day, Yuri and I decided, well, we've had enough of Peggy's tyrannical rule, and we mutinied. So Yuri and I mutinied. We took these inflatable pirate cutlasses and attacked Peggy, and we threatened to make her walk the plank out the airlock. And we told the ground that we talked to Mission Control. We said we have 3 demands if you want to see Peggy again. The first is, we are tired of flying to the east. We want to turn this thing around and fly to the west. Second demand was, we wanted a hot tub. And then the third demand was pizza. We wanted pizza, and we wanted it now. And we didn't get any of those things because the guys in Mission Control looked at the calendar, as did Peggy, and they realized it was April 1st. So this is our April Fool's Day joke. But I did, for a glorious few minutes, I did get the ground to refer to me as Commander Reisman. So that was kind of cool. So I showed you on the film all the fun stuff that we did, but the truth is we were working really hard. While I was up there, this was the peak of the space station construction. And we had, just like any good space station should, we had a lot of spaceships coming and going. So while I was there, we had 9 different either dockings or undockings of spaceships. And I was there for 95 days, so roughly every 10 days a ship was either coming or going. It kept us really busy. In fact, if I would have stuck to the schedule, I would have had only about, if I went to sleep on time, I would have had only about 1 hour a day for personal time when I wasn't working or having a meal or something like that. So that's all the time I had to look out the window, send emails. We have a phone, actually, so I was able to call people. But all that stuff, I only had an hour. What I did was I'd stay up late, and we all pretty much did that. But I was just trying to give you an idea of how busy we were. And like I said, the main reason were all these ships coming and going. This is one of those ships. And this is the Jules Verne, or we call it the ATV. This is a cargo ship that the Europeans put together. And it was making its first voyage to the space station. This is the first voyage of this ship. And since it was called the Jules Verne, and since it was the maiden voyage, they actually included on board there some of the original manuscripts in Jules Verne's own hand. And we got those, and the problem was they were all in French. And they didn't have the heart to tell the ground that the French guy left. So we didn't really get to enjoy this too much, but it was a nice gesture. This is another cargo ship that serves the same function. This is Progress. This is a Russian cargo ship. And so all these cargo ships, they bring us up new things like new food, clothing, all the supplies we need, new air. We really like to get the air. It's always nice. And then what we do is, people ask me all the time, what do you do with your trash? And do you wash your clothes? The answer is no. You wear them until they get really stinky, and then you throw them out. So all of our trash goes into these ships, and then these ships are not equipped with any kind of thermal protection system, no heat shields or parachutes, so they can't come back through the atmosphere. They just go into the atmosphere and burn up. When I say that we put all of our trash inside, I really do mean all of our trash. So that includes solid and liquid waste trash. So that goes inside there, and then it burns up. So the next time you're out with your boyfriend or girlfriend or significant other, it's a really romantic night, and you're gazing up at the stars, you see a beautiful shooting star go by, and you make a wish. I hate to tell you, but you might be wishing on poop. This is another cargo ship. This one is, I'm sorry, this is not a cargo ship. It looks a lot like the last one, the Progress, but this is a Soyuz. In fact, one of these launched this morning from Kazakhstan, which is where the Russians, that's their version of Cape Canaveral, is Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. And inside here are people. The difference between this ship and the other one is this one does have parachutes and thermal protection systems, so it carries people. And what it was doing was, after I was up in space for 1 month with Peggy and Yuri, Expedition 16 came to an end, and Peggy and Yuri were going to go home. And so I got some new crewmates. And we began Expedition 17. And this is my new crew. It consists of 2 Russian cosmonauts. There's Sergei Volkov and Oleg Kononenko. And Sergei, something very interesting about Sergei, our commander, his father was a cosmonaut. So Sergei is the second generation space traveler. So they came, and it was time for Peggy and Yuri to go home. And you notice we have one more person. So the Soyuz carries 3 people. So in addition to Sergei and Oleg, we also had a visitor, which is Soyeon. Soyeon was the first South Korean astronaut. So she came up, and she was really a great person to have in space. She was always really fun and had a very bubbly personality. And she also brought us kimchi, which after months of eating all this kind of military rations that we have for food was really, really nice. So that was a very good thing. So the 3 of them climbed back 10 days later, climbed back into their Soyuz, and they went home. So this is their Soyuz leaving the space station. I took this picture out the front window, and they're re-entering. The way this works is the Soyuz has 3 compartments, and right before it enters the atmosphere, they separate. So this orbital module and the propulsion module get discarded, and they just burn up in the atmosphere. The only part that comes home is this capsule part right here, and that's the only part that has the heat shield and the parachutes. They actually had a very bumpy ride home. They had a failure. One of the bolts that separates, at that time of separation, there are 5 pyro bolts that are supposed to separate. And one of those 5 didn't work. And so these 2 pieces were connected together as they went into the atmosphere, and it messed everything up. And actually it was coming in backwards. Instead of the heat shield facing the heat, the hatch was. So it was a little scary, and they were being thrown around like crazy inside. It was very, very uncomfortable. But fortunately, eventually that bolt failed due to thermal stress. And the module separated, and then everything worked fine from that point on. But they had a very interesting ride back home. This is, as far as what we do all day, one of the things we do is we do some scientific experiments. It's really pretty much a full-time job for 3 people just to keep the space station running. When we go to 6 people, we're going to have more time to do payloads and experiments. But we still did some while I was there. And this is one of the experiments I was working on inside our glove box. And sometimes you do the experiment, and sometimes you are the experiment. So this is one of the areas, or the area that NASA has focused our research on, is in the human performance and reaction, the physiological reaction to space. So in other words, how do we keep people healthy for a long time? Because what we want to do is we want to go back to the moon, and then we want to go onto Mars. And to do that, it's going to take a long time. Right now, we're pretty good at keeping astronauts healthy for up to 6 months in 0 gravity. But to go to Mars, it takes almost a year to get there. You have to spend almost a year on the planet and almost a year coming back. So it's a little bit over 2 years total mission. So right now, we don't really have the capability to keep people healthy for that long. And That's why we're doing a lot of this research to try to figure out how to do that better. So let's see. I have a question I'll ask the kids over here. Who can tell me what that little red bubble is? Yeah. Well, very close. It's not quite water, but you're on the right track. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. It's juice. Very good. So yeah, that's a little bit of tropical punch right there, as you can tell by my festive shirt. So due to something called surface tension, which you guys will learn about later, liquids, when they're released into zero gravity, form a ball. And so one of the things that it's fun to do, we normally drink, people ask, well, how do you drink? You can't use a cup, right? Because you pour liquid into a cup. First of all, it's not going to pour. Second of all, it's not going to stay in a cup, right? So how do you drink stuff? Well, the answer is that we have little pouches that you probably saw in the video that are filled with water and juices and things like that. And we just squeeze on those. It's kind of like drinking out of a juice box. There's a little straw. The only difference is the straw has a little clip on it. So it's a valve that you can shut off, because otherwise if you left the straw open, the liquid would just kind of float on out. But the other way you can do it is you can just squeeze a little liquid out and make a sphere like that, and then you can just pretend you're a big fish. You gobble it up. So yes, in space it's okay to play with your food. You guys saw this in the video, how we cut our hair in space. Even I had to do that once in a while. And you can see, who knows what this big gray, what's this big gray thing? Yeah. Yeah. That's right. You guys are great. That's a vacuum cleaner. It's hooked up to a vacuum cleaner. And so otherwise, when you cut your hair, if you didn't have that vacuum cleaner, the hair would just float all over the place. It wouldn't fall to the floor where you can sweep it up. So what we do is we attach this vacuum cleaner, and it just sucks all the hair in as you cut it. Okay, now this is a little trickier one, so adults are in on this one, all right? You saw me bouncing up and down on this thing in the video. Who knows, who can tell me what that was for? Why was I doing it? Now you know, you saw the last presentation. You don't get the answer. Okay, well, we'll go with these things, yeah. No, I'm sorry, you already answered. Let's go right here. Yeah.
Because you can stay in shape.
For exercise, right? No. Sorry, good guess. That's a very good guess. That's what a lot of people guess, but that's not quite it. Yeah.
To power the rocket?
No, it kind of looks like that. People also guess. I'll tell you this also. I'm not firing the laser cannon. That's right out. Any of the adults want to take a shot at this? You know what that's for? Nobody. Come on, you just guess. It's not a test. You're not going to get it. No? All right, I'll tell you. It's a scale. This is how we measure how much we weigh, which is very important to the doctors to see how our health is doing. But the way this works as a scale is because obviously if you have a regular scale and you step on it, first of all, you can't really step on it, but if you did, it would say 0. So that doesn't really help you very much, right? So the way this works is there's a spring in there that's compressed, and when you squeeze the trigger down there, it releases the spring, and they start bouncing up and down. And what you guys have learned in your physics class is that in the same that is resistance. So by exercising your bones into thinking that there's gravity, at least for a short period of time, and then they reverse the process. Your body is amazing. As soon as it goes into this new environment, it begins to adapt. And one of the ways it adapts is it realizes, hey, I don't need this incredibly heavy skeleton because I don't have to bear my own weight anymore. Just like fish have very thin bones, the human body realizes, hey, that's all I really need too up here in space. So you begin to shed calcium. It's kind of like getting osteoporosis. That's fine in space. None of this stuff really hurts you when you're up in space. The problem is when you come home. We don't want to send our first astronauts to Mars, have them step out onto the surface of Mars and break their leg. So what we do is we do a lot of exercise. So we spend 2 hours a day, almost every day. I think it was 95% of the days I was on orbit, I did 2 hours of exercise a day. And one of the ways we exercise is by using this treadmill. Now that you saw this on the video, it works just like a treadmill on Earth. The only difference is, in order to run, you have to wear this harness, which is connected to these white things. You see, these white things are bungee cords, and just hold you down. You have to strain against them and stand up, hold you onto the treadmill, and then you can run kind of like normal. I guess I describe it as being a little more bouncy than running on Earth, but otherwise it feels pretty much like running on a treadmill in the gyms. We also have this. This is a way that we can lift weights, because if you can imagine if you had weights up there, you can lift as much as you want, and it wouldn't really do anything for you because they wouldn't weigh anything. So you wouldn't believe how much I could bench press up in space, how many chin-ups I could do. It's awesome. But it wouldn't help you out at all. So what we have is this device, and inside these canisters are a bunch of elastics. And when you pull on these cords, the elastics stretch, and that's how you can do exercises. And by hooking up these shoulder pads and these handles and these bars, you can do deadlifts, you can do bench press, you can do squats. So all the stuff that you can do in a gym, pretty much you can do up there using this device. And then finally we have an exercise bike. This works just like an exercise bike in a gym that you guys might have rode at some point or another. The only difference is you clip into the pedals using these racing bike shoes, which are standard racing bike shoes. Once you clip in, you don't need a seat. So you just pedal along and you don't have to sit down, which is really nice because your rear end doesn't get tired. And the other thing you can't see though is right down about here in the floor, there's a big window that looks down on the Earth. So you can watch the world go by as you ride your bike. And we have some people who are in really good shape that have ridden the bike around the world. I never did that. That takes an hour and a half. But I did once on the treadmill. I ran across the Pacific Ocean. So that was cool. Okay, one of my favorite hobbies up there, if you could call it that, was taking photographs of places that I had been to before, places that were important to me. And so when I take these photographs, when I know I'm flying over somewhere that is special, I would go get my camera and try to take a photograph. So who can guess where this is? Any guesses? Yes, way back there.
Paris.
That's right. Very good. This is Paris. If you look really carefully, right here's the Eiffel Tower. There's a shadow of the Eiffel Tower going across the Seine. So that is Paris. All right, who can guess where this is? Yeah, I heard that. Okay, right there. Yeah. That's right. It's Yankee Stadium. And you see the old stadium right there, and there's a new stadium being constructed at the time. So you can see these great pictures that we could take from up in space, but the thing I wanted to, here's one more. Who can guess where this is? Yes, right there. In the red shirt. Close. Anybody else? This is okay for adults too. That's right, it's Parsippany. Yep. That's the reservoir, and there's like Parsippany right up there. So Parsippany High School is right there. That's the Knoll golf course right down there. So it took me a long time actually. Taking these photographs was really hard, and I'll explain why in just a second. Because you can see here, you can see Parsippany High School if you look really carefully. Actually, that's the high school right there. I think that's Northville. But anyway, you can see these places in these photographs, but the trick is you're going to get the wrong impression. You cannot see this by looking out the window. These photographs I'm showing you were taken with an 800 millimeter lens. It means the lens was this big. Okay, so it's like a big telescope that we attach to the camera, like a big telephoto lens, and then we can take these photographs. But that's not what it looks like when you look out the window. When you look out the window, it looks like this. Who knows what this is? Long Island, that's right, that's Long Island. So this was taken with a 55 millimeter lens, which means that it's 1-to-1 magnification. So this is what it really looks like out the window when you look with your naked eye. And so if you want to take a picture of Yankee Stadium, it's kind of hard to find. You have to first find Long Island, because that sticks out into the water, that's easy. And then you see, okay, well, then over here, if you go all the way over to the west, there's Brooklyn. If you look really carefully, there's Manhattan, and you can see Central Park with the naked eye. There's a little faint rectangle right there. And then you know that the Bronx is somewhere up here, and the Yankee Stadium is right about there. Then you quickly grab that gigantic camera, and you try to get a photograph, snap, 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 real quick, because you only have a few seconds, and you're by. It took us 10 minutes to fly from Los Angeles to New York. So you get an idea how fast you're going by. You really don't have much time to get these pictures. This is another photo I took with the 55. So again, this is what it really looks like. Who knows where this is? Okay, yes. Yeah.
France?
No, not France. Catalina. That's correct. There's Catalina Island down here, and this is Los Angeles. So that's what Los Angeles looks like. So you can't see individual buildings. You see this strange kind of grayish grid-like texture, and you can't really see the texture in the photographs. But when you look with your own eye, you can see this kind of bumps to it. And you know that that's man-made because nothing else looks like that. But you can't see buildings. You can see long causeways and large bridges. I was able to see the Golden Gate Bridge just with my own eye. And you can even see the color of it. This is what dawn or dusk looks like from space. We're used to thinking about dawn and dusk, sunrise and sunset as intervals of time. So, you know, maybe sunrise was 6:50 this morning to 7 a.m., something like that. So it's maybe a 10-minute interval. But when you're up in space, you realize that it really shouldn't be expressed in terms of time. It should be expressed in terms of a distance. Because what it is this band of shadowy light between the sunlit Earth and the dark Earth. So you have this band that's creeping across the planet. And it actually looks pretty evil. Because it's kind of got this, I don't know if you can really see, but it's got a bit of an orange, reddish glow to it. And so it looks like it's just kind of devouring the Earth as it moves on by. The good thing is when 45 minutes later, when you come around the other side, the Earth pops out the backside again. So that makes it feel a little bit better. Okay, this is another thing I wanted to show you. This is another photograph I took, obviously. Who knows where this is? There you go, Draymond. How can you tell? It's all clouds. I'm just kidding. This is the East Coast of the United States. But you never know it, because one of the big problems is you get excited about taking these photographs, and then when you get over the top of some of these things, it'd be a really cloudy day and you can't see anything. But the reason I show you this is take a look at this up there. That blue line that stretches across the very top, if you can see that. See that blue line right up there? Who knows what that is? Okay, yes, Frederick. That's right. You guys are great. That is the atmosphere. And that is all there is to it. If you look really carefully at that, look how incredibly thin that is. And when you're up there and you're looking at this with your own eyes, it is scary. It's really shocking to see. It looks like the atmosphere is so incredibly thin and fragile, it looks like if a breeze came by, it would just rip it right away from the Earth. I mean, if you look at that, if you hold your pinky out at arm's length, that's about the thickness of the atmosphere as seen from our orbit of a couple hundred miles up. So when you look at it, that really thin atmosphere, and then you think about, let me ask you this question. Which is deeper or thicker, the height of the atmosphere or the depth of the ocean? Any adults want to take a shot at this? The ocean, right? The ocean is deeper. No. The ocean is, it's an order of magnitude less deep than the height of the atmosphere. So the deepest part of the ocean is, in the Marianas Trench, is roughly, I think it's roughly 30,000 feet. But the atmosphere, depends how you define it, but the atmosphere goes up to about 50 to 100 miles. So the atmosphere is about, it's about 10 times taller than the ocean is deep. So when you think about that, you realize that when you think of Earth, right, everything you think of are things like forests, you know, animals, people, the sky, the ocean, everything you think of as the Earth is confined to this incredibly tiny layer around a big dead rock. So really, the Earth is a big planet. When you look at it, just look how big that is. It fills up the whole screen. But the part that's important to us, everything that matters to us, is in this tiny, tiny, tiny sliver around this rock. And that tiny, tiny sliver is like the skin on an apple. It's roughly that dimension. So if you think about it that way, the sky doesn't seem so vast, the oceans don't seem so wide, and you realize that this is a very fragile, precious thing that we really need to take care of. This is my ride home showing up in the driveway. There's the Space Shuttle Discovery right out the window. And Discovery, in addition to being my ride home, its other mission was it brought up the rest of the Japanese laboratory modules. See, this enormous module is the biggest one that has ever been brought up and ever will be brought up to the space station. It fills up the entire payload bay, and that was their main mission, was to install a module. So there it is after it got installed. There it is up there. In case you couldn't figure out which one it was, it's got the big Japanese flag on there, and if that's not enough, it says Japan. Really big. But that's okay. We pretty much all did that to our modules. And there it is, new installed. If you look very carefully, there's Dexter right there hiding on the bottom of the hull. That's the view at the side window of that new module. You can see that the whole truss, the backbone of the space station at the window, as well as, again, the Earth. We're flying over Africa, and you can start to see how incredibly thin the atmosphere is right on the edge. This is the crew of again, color-coded, so nobody gets lost. The blue guys are space station guys, and the guys in the brown shirts are all Space Shuttle crew members. And there's a couple of neat things here. First of all, this is Greg Shamatov. He was my replacement. So he took over for me when I went home. And the other thing that's really interesting is that 4 of us here have ties to New Jersey. So I was out, you know that I was actually born right down the road at Morristown, and I lived in Parsippany. We have our pilot, Ken Ham. He was born in Clark, New Jersey, grew up there. The commander, Mark Kelly, grew up in Orange, New Jersey, was born there and grew up in Orange. And then finally, the 4th member is Akihito Hoshide. Now, Aki is a Japanese astronaut, and what he did was actually, his father was a visiting professor at Princeton, so he spent some of his childhood right here in New Jersey. So he was claiming to be a Jersey boy, too. I was a little skeptical, and I said, okay, name 3 songs by Bon Jovi and 3 songs by Springsteen, and maybe, and all he could come up with was Born in the USA. No, I don't think so. Well, and the other guy, we also have Ron Garrett here. He is actually from Yonkers. So of the 7 people on the space shuttle, we had 4 or 3.5 New Jersey guys and 1 guy from New York. Now, one of the things you saw in the movie was we do what's called a fly around. So you do just a loop around the whole space station to give yourself kind of a victory lap at the end of your mission and get good photographs of the outside of the space station. And this is a picture that we took. And the thing that this moment was incredibly gratifying for us because we saw the results of our whole mission. So we see the Jules Verne making its first flight, still docked to the back of the space station. We see the new Japanese laboratory module and the piece that we brought up on our flight on Endeavour. And if you look really carefully, it's hard to see, but right down there is Dexter. So we could see all of it, and it was really just a wonderful moment while we played that music and flew all the way around. Now, just yesterday, the Space Shuttle Discovery again left the space station. And on this last mission, just last week, they installed the last solar array. So if you notice, it's not quite balanced. We have 2 over here and only 1 over here. What they did is they added the last wing out here. So now it's balanced. We got 2 here, 2 there. So I just saw the first pictures that they took because they just did their fly around last night. And I saw the first pictures with the full space station completely done, looking just like the artist's drawing. And it's really an exciting thing for us. By the way, to give you an idea how big this is, from one end of the solar array to the other is about the size of a football field. It's pretty close to 100 yards. our landing in Florida. And this is our welcome home ceremony in Houston, when we all got back to Houston. And finally, after being on orbit for about 3 months, I finally came back here to the Northeast and got myself some decent pizza. And that's it. We're running a little late, but I think we have time for a couple questions, if that's all right. Am I getting ahead now yet? It's okay? Okay. Let's start with the right there, the blue shirt. When we wrote the simulator.
Could you repeat the question, too?
Sure. I think you said you actually were in a simulator once, too. Wow, for airplanes. That's very cool. Okay, we got another question? Right there. Yes.
Have you decided on whether you're going to go back up?
No, that's probably imminent. There's only 3 space shuttle missions left to be assigned, and it looks like they're going to start assigning those at the end of April. So stay tuned. We'll see what happens. I didn't break anything too expensive when I was up there, so I'm hoping that I will get another ride. Yes.
What level of radiation level do you astronauts experience?
The
You can give numbers.
Yeah, I don't know the actual numbers as far as how many really rides we were taking, but I can tell you that our time on orbit is you are exposed to a much higher level of radiation than you are terrestrially, and in fact, the amount of time in your career that you can spend on orbit is defined by the same OSHA requirement we use for radiation workers, meaning that you're not allowed to increase your lifetime cumulative chance of getting cancer by more than 1 or 2%. 1.5% is the threshold. So at that threshold, it depends on your age, but typically it gives you a little bit over a year, maybe a year and a half of total time on orbit before you hit that. So that gives you a rough idea what it's like. Let's go to the kids here. Who hasn't asked the question yet? Right there. What kind of experiments did I do? Well, we did the experiment you saw me working on there involved the mixing of solids and liquids in zero gravity to see how the things separate under the action of very small forces that you can't observe on the Earth. So some fluid and solid mechanics, some science that involves solids and liquids. We also did a lot of biological studies. We looked at the human immune system, and we took I was a guinea pig for a lot of that, so I had to take a lot of my own blood and other samples that we then sent down to the lab. So there's a whole bunch of different things. Yes, right there. Yes. Did I like the food? Some of it I liked a lot. Yeah. First of all, half our food was Russian and half our food was American. The American food was all kind of like military rations or like camping food. If you guys have ever gone camping with a bunch of dehydrated stuff and you pour water in, you mix it up and then eat it. It's kind of like that. And some of it was pretty good. There's a barbecue beef that wasn't bad at all. And a nice shrimp cocktail was pretty good. And then the Russian food was typical Russian style. So we had a lot of good soups. We had borscht and other soup that was really very good. And we had lots of meat and fish dishes. And they were all in cans, so it tasted pretty good. The only thing is when you open up those cans, it kind of looks like dog food, to be honest with you. So it tasted okay, but it wasn't too pleasing to look at. Any other questions from the big guys? Anybody? Right here?
What were some of your health effects after you landed?
That's a good question. The first thing was everything felt really heavy. So the first thing I did was I took off my helmet and I held it out like this, and it felt like I was holding the anchor to the USS Nimitz in my hand. And that was a little disconcerting because I was wondering how I was going to brush my teeth and hold up the toothbrush. But pretty soon that all started coming back, and recovery was actually pretty rapid. After about a week, I got tested for our physical fitness test, And I was actually, after just 7 days, I was back to baseline on all the strength-related things. The only thing I was down on was flexibility and agility. So it takes a little while for your muscles to come back. But in addition to feeling weak, the other thing that you feel, the biggest effect you feel right after landing is in the vestibular system. So your sense of balance is all out of whack. And so when I first stood up, which was only about 15 minutes after landing, I would have keeled right over if I didn't have something to hold on to. Fortunately, in the mid-deck of the space shuttle, there's all kinds of things to hold on to. So I just held on for dear life until it felt a little better. Then I took one step, and it's kind of a gradual process. Because your inner ear is useless when you're in space, because it relies on gravity to function. So what happens is you get this kind of disorientation when you first go up to space, and then your brain, it's remarkable how it adapts, and it figures out to ignore the inner ear and just go with the visual. And then your brain is suddenly getting inputs again that make sense, but it was conditioned to ignore those inputs, and now it's all confused again. So it takes a couple hours before, and sometimes that could take up to 3 or 4 days. And in fact, most astronauts, when they come back from 6 months up in space, it takes about 30 days before the doctors let you drive your own car by yourself because of that effect. Let's see, we got time for one more. Okay, yes, right there. Yeah, we can take care of that after this is over, okay? Okay, we'll give one last question to the kids. One more. Who has that? Only raise your hand if you haven't asked a question yet. Okay. Right there. How did it feel when I first got in space? Well, it felt really kind of strange. First of all, it felt wonderful because everything started floating, and it was just like I expected it to be, and it was just great to... And on one hand, it was great. It was just marvelous just to see how things would react without gravity. It was really fun. Just like if you let go of a book, it would just kind of spread out like this, and all the pages would just open up and it would just float around like that. So just looking at little things like that was fascinating. But it was also really hard to get work done because you feel like you're not used to it at all. And you feel like a fish out of water. You're kicking people and knocking into things and just, spinning upside down while you're trying to do something. You start turning a bolt and you start going the other way. So it felt really, really weird, but also really, really fantastic at the same time. So I think that's all the questions we have time for. So we are on a tight schedule, but let's give Dr. Reisman a very, very